Most of you have worked in construction or seen construction sites. You may be wondering, why go through a safety orientation course? First and foremost, as your employer, we feel it is our #1 priority to ensure that you return home each and every day in the same condition you arrived in. Construction sites present many hazards. The risk of injury is high if proper precautions are not taken by the company and if established rules are not followed. The ultimate risk is serious injury or even death to you or your fellow employees. By providing this training, we also fulfill some of our obligation under the law. OSHA establishes minimum requirements for safety on job sites that all employees must follow. However, simply following the rules does not guarantee your safety. Therefore, we try to exceed standards to protect you and our company's bottom line. In fact, a lot of our customers expect higher levels of safety, and thus rules are enhanced to suit the situation. While not every hazard you may encounter can be covered in this course, we do want to take a moment to tell you about what is going on in construction today. As a result of completing this course, you should understand injury statistics related to new workers in construction, identify the major hazards present in various construction sites, and describe the basic steps we are taking and rules you should follow to protect yourself. Let's start by looking at some important statistics. Data on workplace accidents shows that 45% of construction injuries occur within the first year of employment. OSHA and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, have seen similar results, but the data they maintain also says that an average of 6 workers die every day on U.S. construction sites. This equates to approximately 1,000 people every year. While the statistics are alarming, proper safeguards can be employed that will protect you and help ensure you don't become one of those statistics. It cannot be stressed enough that you play a vital role in your own protection. You bear personal responsibility to follow the rules mandated for each job you work on. If you feel a condition is unsafe, or if a task can't be performed in a safe manner, make the effort to notify your supervisor, foreman, and fellow employees immediately. Your and our success depends on it. Mitigating hazards before work is started each day or before tasks begin is part of our responsibility as an employer. However, arriving each day to the job site prepared to work and outfitted in the right attire is yours. Ensuring safety and productivity requires that you come to work fit for duty, and that means your attire includes work boots, no tennis shoes, hard-soled at a minimum with a steel toe preferred, work pants, no shorts, shirts with sleeves, hard hats required at all times, work gloves if they're company issued and required, safety glasses, your first pair is company issued, no jewelry of any kind. Keep in mind that no one is exempt from these basic necessities. This attire and equipment are just the basics for everyday activities. Depending on the tasks you are scheduled to perform and the customers we work for, requirements may be drastically changed. Therefore, each job is different. Whatever the situation calls for, we need to adapt to ensure the safety of everyone who is exposed to job site hazards. Whatever the conditions are, our first priority will be to remove all exposure to hazards. These types of engineering controls could include exhausts to remove contaminants in the air, guardrails to prevent falls from elevation, or changes to equipment and processes that eliminate potential hazards. Since each instance is evaluated on a case-by-case basis, additional PPE may be needed if the hazard cannot be engineered out. Some examples include additional eye and face protection when grinding or cutting, additional clothing requirements depending on the working environment and job site conditions, respirators if and when airborne contaminants are present, hearing protection devices if noise levels are elevated, and personal fall arrest systems when working at heights such as harnesses, lanyards, and anchor points. If these additional measures are necessary, you will be informed and training will be administered to safeguard you and your coworkers. Now let's talk about some of the major hazards you may encounter on the job site. The first and probably most critical hazard you'll find while working is heights. Falls from elevation are the leading cause of fatalities in construction. Because of the serious nature of working at heights, our policy is to employ a fall management program anytime you're working 6 or more feet above the ground. Bear in mind that the 6-foot measurement is taken from the bottom of your feet down to the ground or to a machine or other potential hazard below you. Here are some of the areas where fall protection is needed: walkways and ramps, open-sided floors and edges, floor openings and holes, wall openings, excavations, and roofs. That's a lot to keep track of, isn't it? But what you really need to remember is 6 feet. Anytime you're working 6 or more feet above the ground or other hazards, then some form of a fall management system is required. The types of systems we employ vary with the nature of the fall hazard. The 3 most common protection systems include guardrails, permanent or temporary, covers over holes, and personal fall arrest systems, PFAS. Other less common systems you may encounter include safety nets and controlled access zones. Due to the requirements of those systems, both on-the-job training and special plans are needed. These would be covered by your foreman at the job site. When used, scaffolding must be capable of supporting 4 times the maximum intended load. It should not be constructed higher than 4 times the minimum base dimension, or else it should be tied and secured to a building or other suitable structure. Scaffolding must be constructed square, level, and plumb. When the first tier of scaffold is erected, check for plumbness and continue doing so as the scaffold is built. Base plates should be used for uprights. They should be secured or nailed to mud sills. The work level on a scaffold should be fully planked between the front uprights and guardrail supports. Guardrails should be installed along the open sides and ends of platforms greater than 10 feet. The clearance distance from scaffolds and overhead lines must be at least 10 feet, and planking must be solid with a 12-inch overlap and no more than 1-inch gaps. Scaffolds should never be moved when people are working on them. Portable ladders or hook-ons should be used for access. Do not climb the cross-bracing or ends of a scaffold unless they have been designed for that purpose. Do not use ladders or other makeshift devices to increase height on platforms. Erectors and dismantlers need to be aware that scaffolding presents significant fall hazards during assembly or dismantling before the guardrail or other fall protection can be established. To reduce fall hazards and to meet 100% fall protection requirements for the project, personal fall protection must be used by workers erecting and dismantling scaffolding as far as it is practical. Ladders. Step ladders should be used only in the open position with the spreader bar locked, and never stand on the top 2 steps of step ladders. The side rails of a ladder should extend at least 3 feet above the upper landing surface. Ladders must be used at an angle of 4 to 1, vertical to horizontal, and they should be tied or secured at the top to prevent tipping. Aerial lifts. Only authorized and trained persons are allowed to use aerial lifts. Workers must be tied off within the basket while working from an articulating boom lift. Use aerial lifts to raise personnel into work position. Chains or guardrails for the ends of scissor lifts should be enclosed while in use. Here are some safety points to keep in mind during excavations. Utility lines must be located and marked prior to digging. Daily inspection shall be made by a competent person, such as a supervisor or someone trained in inspection. The spoil pile must be located at least 2 feet from the edge of the excavation. Sloping or shoring must be used in excavations deeper than 5 feet to prevent cave-ins. The appropriate sloping angle should be determined based on soil conditions. And there must be a suitable means of exit, also called egress, from the excavation, usually a ladder, for every 25 feet of lateral travel. Lockout tagout. Working on machines that have not been properly shut down, locked, and tagged out often results in serious injury. We do not allow any work to be performed on machines or equipment without it being made inoperable through our lockout-tagout procedures. You are not permitted to work on any machines or equipment without first using an approved lock to effectively isolate all power sources. Understand that there may be multiple energy sources within one piece of machinery. You must also attach a tag with your name and any other information we require on the tag. This is to let us know exactly who has the equipment locked out and why. For work requiring multiple personnel, each worker should apply their own lock to a multiple locking hasp. Finally, you are the only person authorized to remove your lock and tag after you have completed your work. If you are unavailable, your supervisor may remove your lock. Heavy equipment. When working with or around heavy equipment, a number of precautions can reduce your risk of injury. Always conduct a pre-trip inspection. Be sure to wear a seat belt when operating heavy equipment. Pay attention to backup alarms, whether on the ground or in a vehicle, and use a signal person in areas of heavy traffic. If you are working on the ground around heavy equipment, be sure to wear a high-visibility garment so that you can be easily seen. Before approaching heavy equipment, you should always communicate with the operator using your voice or another recognizable signal so that he or she is aware of your presence. Confined spaces are places that are not designed for continuous occupancy, have no easy way to enter or exit, and have the potential for hazardous atmospheres. A confined space can be a hopper, duct system, manhole, excavation, or any number of places that people are not intended to occupy. For confined spaces that have moving equipment, the equipment must be made inoperable. This will involve lockout-tagout of all power sources. To prevent materials from entering the space, it may be necessary to blank pipes or ducts entering or leaving the space. Air testing must be performed prior to any work being done to be sure there is sufficient oxygen and there is no toxic gas that could be inhaled. The supervisor for the job in the confined space must complete an entry permit. This permit should cover some or all of the following items: the names of workers assigned to enter the confined space, the name and position of the person who is authorized or in charge, a description of the hazards known or expected to be present in the confined space, atmospheric testing results done before and during the entry period, the work being performed, the PPE required, and the rescue procedures. The permit is only good for the duration of one shift. If the work takes longer than that, another permit must be filled out. There must be an attendant standby person in communication with every person inside the confined space at all times. Housekeeping. Good housekeeping is the sign of a well-run job site. It is the responsibility of every worker and contractor on site to keep their work area organized and clean. Keep walkways and exit areas clear of all construction materials and refuse. Materials should be neatly stacked, and scrap material disposed of immediately to reduce the risk of injury from slips, trips, and falls. Our housekeeping rules apply to contractors, too. Contractors who fail to meet housekeeping requirements will be billed for cleanup costs. Chemicals on site. All chemicals brought onto the job site must be identified and approved, and there must be a Material Safety Data Sheet, MSDS, for each one. If you use containers other than the one the chemical came in, you must label the container or use the chemical immediately. It is important that you understand the short and long-term effects of the chemicals on your body, how to recognize symptoms of overexposure, and what PPE is required to protect yourself. Consult the MSDS or check with your supervisor for this information. Fire protection. Fire extinguishers are posted and made available for every 3,000 square feet of work area. These extinguishers are located in key locations near columns or stairwells. They are located in designated areas, identified by red markings and labels, and elevated within clear view. Do not relocate or block access to fire extinguishers. If you use a fire extinguisher, report it immediately to the general contractor so that it can be replaced. Keep fire extinguishers in your immediate area during all hot work operations. Ready for a quick quiz on what we've covered so far? Select the correct answer to each question as it appears. If there is a problem while you're working, what should you do? A. Forget about it. B. Stop work and resolve it. Or C. Bring it up at your pre-work meeting the next day. Right, if you run into a problem, you should stop work and resolve it right away. A visitor shows up for a site tour wearing shorts and sandals. Can he come on site? A. Yes. Or B. No. Right. Our clothing rules apply to all personnel on site, including suppliers and visitors. What percentage of the time should hard hats be worn on a construction site? A. 100%, B. 95%, or C. 80%. Yes, hard hats should be worn 100% of the time. What's the sign of a well-run job site? A. Smiling workers, B. Piles of scrap materials, or C. Good housekeeping. Yes, good housekeeping is a sign of a well-run job site. There must be a current blank for all chemicals brought on site. A. CFR, B. CSS, C. OSHA, or D. MSDS. Right, all chemicals brought on site must have an MSDS or Material Safety Data Sheet. What should you never relocate? A. A fire extinguisher, B. A chemical container, or C. Safety goggles. That's right, never relocate a fire extinguisher. Handheld tools. To prevent injuries and accidents, you should inspect all handheld tools daily before using them. Look for broken or cracked handles, mushroomed heads, and other signs of wear and tear. Damaged equipment should be removed from service immediately. Always use the right tool for the job, and use tools only for their intended purpose or design. Electrical and power tools. When using power tools, make sure they are protected by a ground fault circuit interrupter, known as a GFCI. There should be documented weekly inspections of all power tools. When inspecting tools, look for a missing ground, frayed wiring, or damaged cords or casings. Confirm that lockout-tagout is in place. Bad equipment should be immediately red tagged and removed from service. In addition to the hazards involving power tools, also be aware of electrical hazards associated with coming into contact with power lines. Watch for overhead lines and relocate when necessary. Crane booms should be kept at least 10 feet away from overhead lines. We've covered most of our safety rules now, so let's see how well you remember them. Click the buttons you see to replace them with a safer alternative that follows our safety rules. Yes, this worker should wear PPE while working. Right, no work should be performed on equipment until it has been properly locked out and tagged. Yes, when working on a scaffold, guardrails must be installed along any open sides and ends. Yes, tie or secure ladders at the top to prevent tipping. Right, before you enter a confined space, there must be a completed entry permit and an attendant. Remember, the best way to prevent injuries and accidents is to know and follow our safety rules. Good communication is key to preventing injury and accidents. For this reason, a pre-work meeting should take place at the beginning of the day and any time the work phase changes or as needed. The meeting should discuss the work to be performed, as well as expectations and responsibilities of all workers within the crew. The meeting also provides the opportunity for the supervisor to observe the workers and assess their fitness to work that day. If a worker's behavior suggests that they may be under the influence of drugs or alcohol or have personal issues that prevent them from focusing on their work, then they could present a danger to themselves and others on the work site. This should be addressed immediately. Use a daily task sheet to document these meetings. Let's look at just a few more rules before we finish our training. Substance abuse. We are committed to providing a safe, drug-free workplace for all employees. Drug testing is performed, where permitted, for all workers before they start work. Other testing includes post-accident and reasonable suspicion testing. The use of alcohol or illegal drugs goes against our goal of reaching the highest standards of employee performance, safety, and health. Workers who abuse alcohol or drugs threaten their safety and the safety of those around them. This is something that cannot and will not be tolerated. If you suspect anyone on the job may be working while under the influence of alcohol or drugs, please notify your supervisor immediately. If an accident should occur, it is your responsibility to report it immediately. In fact, if anything looks wrong, report it to your supervisor. This module has given you an overview of how we expect you to work safely while you are on our site. If work conditions change unexpectedly, work should be temporarily stopped and a brief on-the-spot meeting held where safety issues should be addressed with all affected workers. Any worker or supervisor is encouraged to call such a meeting when an issue arises. We do not want you to assume anything about the job. If you have doubts about any aspect of your work here, ask your supervisor or contact the general contractor. Let's conclude our orientation with a summary of what you've learned. First of all, we are required to provide a safe workplace. We will not ask you to perform any task that will put you, your company, or any other workers at risk. We have a site-specific safety program in place. We try to eliminate or reduce hazards through engineering practices, but when this is not feasible, we tell you about the hazards and how to protect yourself from them. Mostly, however, your safety depends on you. We expect you to work safely so that you do not injure yourself or someone else. We will not tolerate violations of our safety rules. There is just too much at stake. Remember, there is a significant difference between compliance with OSHA and safety. OSHA sets the minimum requirements by law, but workers can still get hurt or killed while complying with OSHA standards. So our standards are more strict than OSHA's. Our main objective is to allow everyone on the job to go home unhurt at the end of the day. In order to achieve this goal, we need your cooperation and commitment.